The final showdown of the day is here. The match of the day is here. It's Liquid v Falcon. A battle on a personal level, on a club level. Here we go.
World #1 versus world #2. Club champions from the Esports World Cup versus the runner-up and a place in the final at the Esports World Cup 2025 is at stake. Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura starts now. This is a semi-final to cherish.
Wow, this would be a worthy final as well, but this is where these two great rivals meet. They've got so much history, so much mutual respect. They've beaten each other time and again. They meet here in Riyadh, one of the biggest matches of the year for sure.
It is the iconic rivalry of modern chess, Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. How many epic battles, finals we've seen them fight in all formats, classical, rapid, blitz, and this is the biggest esports stage. Only one will join Ali Reza for the battle for championship.
And I love this, right? It's the three players that we put down collectively as our favorites to walk away with the entire thing. Well, good news, everyone's correct. One of these three is going to win $250,000 and 1,000 club points towards the Esports World Cup Club Championship. That much locked in. The question is who now joins Ali Reza in the final?
That's the big one. And, you know, in this format, 10+0, yes, Magnus Carlsen has been the big favorite, regardless of who he plays, even Hikaru Nakamura in their recent matchups, taking those big wins. But 10+0, you know, Hikaru, what a beast he is when it comes to those time scrambles. It's anyone's match.
Wow, and already some early developments here, some early drama. Hikaru plays the double Queen's Gambit, where White's Gambit met by a Black Gambit, and we see a quick trade of pawns, the Black Queen coming out to the center. This one has an interesting reputation. Hikaru frowning there, looking up to the sky, trying to recall what to play next, but he's made this line his own. Has Magnus Carlsen done his homework?
This is got to be part of the prep here. Magnus, you know, he's got that time. He's got that push as well, regardless of who he's playing against. And I think at this stage, he's so motivated. Team Falcons have already landed on that final stage, right? For Liquid, Magnus is the big hope right now. He's not only fighting for himself. It's not only for his own personal glory, but he's fighting for his club right now.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of prize money on offer for the club championship is huge. If Hikaru Nakamura were to win, guaranteeing Team Falcon's top spot because he would be playing against his teammate in the final. That is massive news for the club and massive news for Hikaru and Ali Reza, of course. That is just such a big, big part of the 8 weeks we spend here at the Esports World Cup. On the other hand, though, the mountain that he has to climb to get to that point is literally the largest immovable object in chess, and that, of course, is Magnus Carlsen.
It's a liquid mountain. How do you climb a liquid mountain?
Right?
It's going to be difficult.
It's not possible.
You fly over it like a falcon.
Exactly.
My feet are just getting wet. I'm going nowhere. This is terrible.
You have to hope it washes away. And here we see Hikaru Nakamura with an interesting pose, covering his face. He's awaiting a big decision from Magnus Carlsen. A pawn has been captured. Does Magnus want a queenless middle game? Does he want to take back with his queen, or for a trade? Or more ambitiously, take back with the knight?
An early think there, decides to keep the queens on the board. Well, Black could still force the trade if you'd like to, if Hikaru wants to, by pushing that e-pawn, e5, driving the knight away. Queen takes queen to follow. We're going to find out about the mindset of these two players. Endgame approaching.
Great call there, Tanya. Forceful move from Hikaru Nakamura. He looks to the sky yet again. Often when he looks up like that, he's just trying to recall something he's seen before. And there we go. He blocks the most logical move with his bishop. We might see bishop trades. We might see queen trades. And quick liquidation of the opening here. Very interesting. It feels a bit cagey from both sides, like they don't want to take too much risk. Pure symmetry with the pawn structure. But maybe Magnus, slightly the more optimistic of the two, since the white Dark Squared Bishop has more potential than its counterpart.
And we're seeing from both players at points insta moves, right? trying to make sure that we preserve as much time on the clock as possible. Hikaru Nakamura down to 8 minutes 37 to Magnus's 8:16. So not a lot of difference, and both players really blitzing these moves out. They know how important having that time bank is going to be when we start having to make some really serious mid-game decisions.
And the queens are off the board, but still a lot left to play, right? You've got the 2 rooks, you've got most of the minor pieces, and interestingly, the way that Hikaru traded pieces, Magnus loses right to castle, but keeps the king in the center. Yet when knight d4 jumps in the air, it can't be feeling completely safe.
Yeah, not entirely safe yet, especially while the rooks live on this board. But then again, it is a decent reward strategy here to keep the king in the middle. It is close to a full endgame now. So the king, much more flexible when it can dart towards either flank. For Magnus, I would say this is his type of position. He looks very chill. Look at the difference in heart rate right now. It's literally 50 between them. That is huge. For Hikaru, I'm not sure whether that's nerve. I'm not sure whether that's just because he's been doing that walk-in out there in the arena. But it's him to move lower on the clock.
It's pretty high energy. I feel like if you walk out onto a stage with Tyler 1 and Sandstorm on it, and you walk off of it not feeling hyped up, you have to have ice in your veins. I've got no other explanation. So I'm sure he's hyped up from the start of the match. Now needs to calm things down, slow things down just a little bit. He's thinking quite hard on what these continuations should be, paying very, very careful attention to how we might be changing the structures going into this endgame.
I wonder if he'll make a small slight first repetition offer on the board right now by retreating that knight and eyeing the d5 square. He doesn't. He wants a fight. He first lines up the rook on the open line, but now that the white knight has moved and the defense of the d4 square is gone, knight c6, knight d4, we might see that happen.
Yeah, interesting. Hikaru, when we heard that soundbite from him earlier, he said he was going to be aggressive against Magnus. With the black pieces, I think aggression yet to be shown. That is the key. It's more from Magnus this time as the white knight jumps forward. First big threat of the game. The g7 pawn is hit, most likely to either move or be defended by black castling.
So at the moment, it's looking like black's wanting to be flexible, wanting to keep his options open. And Hikaru may be thinking, well, I can see a universe where my king simply steps up, the queens are off the board, it connects my rooks, and I'm also close to the center of the board, just like the white king. Do I want to be shuffling myself into the corner? There is the potential of trying to get a little bit of time, gain some time, grab a bit of tempo with that. But when you castle here, you're not exactly hitting anything, you're not exactly creating a one-move threat. So maybe it's not worthwhile, and g6 is just fine.
But that would create potentially long-term complications for black on the dark squares, right? Pawn moves you have to be so incredibly careful with. G6 is on Hikaru's radar, pros and cons. You castle, your king goes to the corner, not ideal in the endgame. You want it in the center. You go G6, yes, you get your king at the center of the board, but what about white's bishop eventually landing on one of those weaknesses that have been created, on G5, on 8-6 eventually? And that's a pros and cons situation, and I think Hikaru's trying to judge exactly the path he wants to take between these two.
Yeah, he's spending a long time pondering over what to do next, though. And ultimately, he does play one of the two most natural moves there. He kicks away the white knight. Well, will the white knight jump, or does Magnus have other ideas in mind?
I just noticed the longer Hikaru thought on that move, his heart rate stayed the same, but Magnus's heart rate started creeping up, and he's going, hang on a second, what's Hikaru seeing here that I'm not? But everything is well with the position. We now see further pressure being applied on the knight on f6, and that move not liked very much.
Yeah, interesting, because that move does make a lot of sense. It just closes the door on the 6th rank. It looks like it covers some squares the white knight might have wanted to use with a check as well. But engines say no. That means there's most likely something a bit tactical here, something a bit forcing to give white a small advantage. Yeah, maybe we can jump in and investigate in the meantime.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look on the analysis board what this could be and why that move is being given a question mark. It's defending, of course, that rook on c6, the knight on f6, so it all looks very natural, but we've got the knight jumping into d6 with a check. Oh, and this is good fun. We're disrupting the harmony of the pieces here, because if you exchange this off, you can then take the black knight on f6. And a fun defense here, you can castle to get yourself out of trouble.
Wow, this has all happened, and the black king has castled. The white rook has slid across to the c1 square, but the white bishop that we just showed there on the green board, Okay, Magnus shaking his head, maybe missing something even stronger, but that white bishop is a beast, hard to get rid of. The black pieces do look a bit clumsy, so I'm a bit surprised Magnus shaking his head there. It looks like he's been playing very logical chess so far.
It still looks pretty good, right? As long as that bishop's there and you're not driving it away, you're feeling good about your chances. The black king tied up to some back rank threats as well. White can start advancing the pawns on that right flank, kind of build up on that pressure. G4, H4, H5, try to get some open lines. Imagine if the H file opens up at some moment. The rook will slide over. I'm already thinking about some checkmating patterns. That bishop on F6 is a monster, and Hikaru needs to get rid of it as quickly as possible.
Brings his rook across. That black knight likely to get kicked back. I think the most natural move in the position would be to force the black knight back out of the white half now by pushing the white a-pawn forward. But ultimately, you still need a follow-up. So Magnus, that heart rate definitely rising, getting a bit excited maybe. This opening looked innocuous, looked level, but Magnus really liking his chances. And interesting, pawn to g4, g for go, g for glory. He's trying to cement his bishop on the f6 square.
Exactly. I think the players were spidey senses tinkling, hearing what Tanya said before, how that bishop needs to be gotten rid of ASAP. Well, the best way to keep it there is to get a pawn onto g5 and really cement it for the long haul. So we're playing the long-term positional chess here, and another problem to solve.
G4 for the score. You know, you not only keep that bishop solid, I'm also looking at the H-pawn moving up. Imagine if the H-line opened up for that white rook.
Right.
Again, that bishop on F6, such a monster. The knight jumping onto D5 at the right moment. The queens might be off the board, but there are still attacking possibilities here on the black king.
Yeah. Definite possibilities.
The knight back to a6. The computer may be thinking there are better options there, but you can totally see the plan, because it can go via c7 to e8, presumably, to try and get rid of the bishop. You can instantly see what they were thinking.
Yep, and Magnus's move given a question mark this time. The white rook, very interesting, it chooses that square where the black knight can continue to harass it. And Magnus now has a decision to make. Does he go back the whole way where he came from? Nope, he stops one square short. He's getting ready to double up those rooks, but look at this, the rook's now lined up. The black bishop wants to reroute, wants to skewer those two white rooks, and the white bishop hit in the process. I think this is a critical moment, something that Magnus might have underestimated. That was why the question mark appeared a couple of moments ago. And look at this, the white bishop hit. If it does retreat and capture a pawn, the black bishop steps across, and the only way to block the diagonal of the white rooks is to push a pawn forward, and now black plays the move f6. The white bishop forced to give way. If it now, for example, steps forward to the d6 square, there would be further tactics. Rook takes bishop amongst others, and let's just show at the very end, the black bishop would hit the two white rooks simultaneously. Magnus wanted to avoid this, hence why he's pushed his pawn forward in the game. And the tension continues. Hikaru, can he trade off that bishop? Can he seek safety with all of these exchanges now?
That will be the big question. And, you know, Hikaru doing what needed to be done. Get rid of that monstrous sniper on f6 right now. Magnus declines it. He also declines a repetition with that last trade. You know, he does control a very important D-line. Notice how Magnus's knight stops Hikaru's rooks from coming into the game. But there's nothing that's going to stop Magnus's rooks from getting into that 7th rank activity. And it might look like balanced material. You know, this position should be edging to the draw, but Magnus with the push. Knight takes pawn, a big threat.
Yeah, a bit of a miss. Apparently, the white rook could also have stepped forward to d5, hitting black's central pawn, which looks almost isolated by now. But Magnus, he's been upping the speed. He's been wanting to keep his extra minute on the clock because he knows it becomes a bit more random if the clocks tick down. For now, white's knight trying to jump in. It's grabbed a pawn. It looks like it's almost trapped itself, but question mark given to Hikaru's move this time. That looks like a very natural move. And now this is the key. A white rook sidestep. The white knight is actually going to use the c8 square to escape. It's a bit of a smash and grab there. He's won a pawn in the process.
Yes, indeed. And Hikaru is going to be wondering, hang on a second, what went wrong that allowed me to go a pawn down in that position? That's going to be really frustrating for him to have to deal with. The knight also a little bit offside on a7. Not ideal for Magnus, but while he has got that problem to solve, the material advantage could end up speaking volumes in an endgame where Magnus is just under a minute up on the clock.
And Hikaru realizes that this has gone completely out of control. The biggest mistake against Magnus Carlsen, trading queens. You get into an endgame and Magnus's Super Beast mode gets activated there. This is vintage Magnus out of a position that felt like there was very little to play for, but move by move, improving every single piece, getting that G-pawn up the board, now up a pawn. This feels like it's going to be a technical grind, something that no one does it better than Magnus Carlsen.
Exactly, huge advantage for white. It's an extra pawn, but the computer says it's an even bigger advantage at the +3 mark. That is huge, and it's because the black knight looks nice and pretty, but can be destabilized because the base, the protector, the e5 pawn. There we go, Magnus was hitting it. He might even try and trade off a set of pawns now, getting closer to his goal. Hikaru, he said he was going to be aggressive, ultimately with black, trying to be too solid. It's backfiring, it's backfired before. Magnus, can he close this out now? Dodging any checks. Hikaru fighting hard, but lower on the clock as well on the board.
And the pawns are beginning to look less and less harmonious as the game goes on, needing to push some additional pawns in order to maintain the stability. And unfortunately, it means we're scrambling to defend instead of going on the offense, which is ideally what you would have wanted to do. So struggling all round at the moment, and Magnus Carlsen starting to turn the screw.
Magnus is up a pawn, and he's the one who's putting the pressure. That pawn could not have been captured. White would have gone f4 in that position, gotten the rook into the game. You look at Hikaru, the shake of the head is back. That is not a happy Hikaru on the camera. He knows that he needs a miracle to survive against the world #1. Magnus, is he going to go all out? Will he get aggressive? He does it. F-pawn goes forward. The rook about to swoop in. He first attacks black rook on h4, and he's surprised. Did he just forget about the f4 pawn?
Magnus, I think, had pre-moved, or almost pre-moved. He was ready to block a check by dropping his knight back, and he's lucky, Magnus, that this is still very good. The computer says +4 still, but I think he hallucinated. He thought the black rook was going to come one square further down, and he dropped his knight back to block this check. He saw the black rook moving. He assumed it was that check. That was the only move he was considering, but the knight block happened anyway, so he's forgotten about this pawn, but the black rook there is actually trapped.
Yeah, he's not taking it, is he? He's going into a bit of a think, is Hikaru Nakamura, and as much as he would like to take it, that is very, very few viable squares. This is awkward as heck for him right now. I don't know. What is going on?
And what a miss by Magnus there. You know, he's still thinking about it. He sort of almost pre-moved this idea. He could have just gone in with the rook. That pretty much would have been match over, game over. Grabbed that pawn on b7, pushed his own pawns. But instead, thinking that h4 square was actually the h3 square, giving a check to the white king. But Hikaru, he still can't grab the pawn on f4. It is still completely winning for Magnus. And I think he knows it.
If you're judging this game by the facial expressions of both players, they both seem disappointed with themselves right now, but for very, very different reasons. And it's rook g4 that ends up getting played.
Hikaru, his eyes were looking up. That's either at the clock or at the resign button. The white rook is coming in. The black rook takes that pawn anyway, but now white goes pawn hunting himself. 2 pawns to 0 on that left flank. They're going to stream forward now. There's even some flashy tactics. Rook takes f7 is a check to try and trade the rooks off. There we go. Magnus takes it. A knight fork incoming. It's going to be a knight endgame. We've seen a few before, but 3 versus 1 in terms of pawns. Hikaru is done.